My name is Richard Ferrer, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm cloud hired.
So, I'm cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired.
Because of Google Architect program, I am cloud hired. See!
I am cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the GlowCloud team.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Mike Gibbs. I'm the CEO of Go Cloud Careers, and I'm here today to basically help you build your technology career. Maybe your goal is to become a cloud architect. Maybe your goal is to become an enterprise architect or a security architect or a cloud security architect or a network architect or any other technology career. And I want you to know what we do. I want you to know the exact skills you need, and I want to help you get there as fast as possible so you can have the career of your dreams. For me, it's been 25 years of IT architecture, network architecture, security architecture, cloud architecture, and enterprise architecture ever since I left internal medicine in my youth. And I have to say, this has been the best thing ever. I just love all these careers. I've done them for about 25 years, and I've spent 2 decades helping people just like you get your first tech job, get promoted to tech, and get hired at companies like Apple, Amazon, Cisco, Google, IBM, Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Barclays Bank, JP Morgan Chase Bank, Palo Alto Network, Zscaler, NetSpoke. I've got people that I've trained that are working there, and I want to help you get to your goals. So ask your questions and don't be afraid. Before we begin answering your questions, which just drop them in the chat box, we really want to help you in your career. I wanted to tell you about 3 free things we have to help you in your technology career. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. we will be doing our How to Become a Cloud Architect webinar. It is live. It is free. It'll be on Zoom. We'll talk about what we do as cloud architects. We'll talk about all the skills you need as a cloud architect. We'll go over the full list. We'll talk about how you can get hired when you don't have experience. We'll talk about what hiring managers actually want in you and how to sneak in when you don't have experience and meet the hiring manager and get hired, and every skill you need to learn. And not only will we talk about that, we'll leave about 60 to 90 minutes where on Zoom we'll give you any kind of questions and answers you want on your career. If you think you're ready for a cloud architect job and you want us to give you a mini interview, we'll test and see if you're ready. And if not, we'll tell you where your gaps are. You want us to look at your LinkedIn or profile or something like that to see if it's going to attract recruiters and hiring managers, we'll look at it. We'll give you some feedback. It's completely live, it's completely free, and it's on Zoom. And I hope to meet many, many of you tomorrow. We also have a completely free guide on how to become a cloud architect, and that guide lists everything you need to know, tells you what we do, and again, it's all free, and it's in the description of this video. And I got another big announcement that's completely free. In about a week and a half, 2 weeks, we're going to launch a completely free CISM cybersecurity bootcamp for the Certified Information Security Manager. It's one of those certifications that we love around here for security leaders, for security architects, and we're going to be doing it live and free. So make sure you sign up and join this free live boot camp. You'll be able to ask questions and we'll answer questions. We want you to learn, and it's free. And there's such a critical shortage of cybersecurity people. So join us and join us free. My team just dropped the link to that in the chat box. So at this point, bring us your questions, and we can do anything we can to help you in your career. Cloud Doctor. The enterprise architect role has really been an interest to you. Good. I think it's a great role. What soft skills have been the most important in your success as an enterprise architect, and how does one develop these skills, and where do you start? I love these questions. So, not everybody realizes, Cloud Doctor, what we do as enterprise architects or what we do as architects in general. So, I'm going to give you some of the things that we do. And then when I tell you the skills that you need for doing this, I'll tell you why. So, one of the things that we do within our organizations is we help a client create a technology roadmap and align it with their business objectives. So, for example, we may have a business, and the business may have a goal to do 2 or 3 things, and they've got a 5 and a 10-year plan. What we might be doing is creating a technology roadmap that could look at that business plan, that can look at that business goals and build the infrastructure, the foundations now, and have it expand as we go out there. So in order to do that, what are those kind of skills? Well, obviously they're networking and data and cloud skills, but that's the business side of it. But we have to have the business acumen to understand the business, to be able to look at business metrics and business finances. We're going to have to understand business processes and business process re-engineering, for example. Now, at the same time, we're going to have to understand how they sell, how they market, and look for opportunities to enhance these processes. And then we can look for ways to augment them with new technologies. For example, what could we do to help them be better? So that's what we're dealing with. So another day we might be developing IT governance policies and procedures. Now, IT governance policies and procedures could be, okay, if a change needs to occur inside of the system, who needs to examine the impact of that change? For example, someone wants to make a change on a core router. Now, that core router is a networking thing, but the impact of that change can affect an application. It could affect the organization's security. It could potentially take down the organization if the change is made at the wrong time per day, or a change affects another part of the system that was not considered, which could cause serious harm. So, we might be creating a change management strategy as part of governance, is determining when a change is made, who needs to evaluate that change, the impacts of that change, which stakeholders need to examine what time it could be made during their business, and what is the process to test a change and then implement a change in the system. That's the kind of thing we do. We will develop and enforce an architecture standard, for example, or a best practice, or we'll be looking at where our IT resources are and find a way if we can better allocate them. So we're going to be doing a lot of presentations. We're going to be doing a lot of meetings with stakeholders. We're going to be doing a lot of vendor management, because there's a lot of vendors involved in an enterprise architecture. We're going to be dealing with business process re-engineering. We're going to be dealing with presentations to the C-suite. We are going to have to get stakeholder buy-in. We're ultimately going to have to sell the vision of the architecture to the team. So what skills does that really tell you, and what skills are that screaming? Well, I can tell you right now, these are the soft skills. Business acumen, because if you don't understand business, you can't design an architecture, because architecture is about designing systems to optimize business performance. So if you don't know business, what are you optimizing? So there's that. So after we get past the business acumen and business knowledge, now we need to talk about presentation skills, because as an architect, I promise you, every day you're giving a presentation. You're either presenting to the C-suite, in which case then you have to be CXO relevant, and that's another skill you need. You're going to be presenting to the board of directors. Again, that same CXO relevancy kind of thing that you're going to need. You could be presenting to the CIO. You could be presenting to a technical audience. You can be speaking to a managerial audience. So you're going to have to be able to present and present well. Now, ultimately, as an architect, we're going to have to convince stakeholders to adopt an architecture, convince the client to invest in our designs, convince people to support the architecture. So that means we're going to need very strong sales skills in any kind of an architectural role. Now, Cloud Doctor, here's the thing. As an architect, we're not touching technology. And in most of the architectures that an enterprise architect would be dealing with, someone like me, we're dealing with companies that have, say, 200,000 employees and 5,000 remote locations, and let's say 100,000 IP addresses that they've used, 10, 15,000 routes in the routing table, 300 or 400 different application vendors, and operating in 10 different countries and operating in industries with various regulations and restrictions. That's the kind of world that I deal with. Now, the key with that is, with any big architecture, is you're going to have the leadership skills, because you can't design an architecture like this by yourself. Typically, it takes me a team of 15 to 50 people 6 months to really uncover all the things we need to about the enterprise, and another 6 months to design the architecture by the time we go back and forth with stakeholders and get their perspectives. So that means you're going to have very good leadership skills. Now, you're going to have to work on something called gravitas or executive presence. And that means you're going to need some kind of executive presence training, very, very critical. Now, obviously, we teach all these skills when we train architects, but if you're not with us, get them. And most of what we're talking about is more of these executive-y skills. The ability to exercise influence and get an audience to kind of do what you need to in an honest and ethical manner is going to be something you're going to have to do as an enterprise architect. Now, because you might have 200 different vendors in your architecture, you're going to have to deal with a lot of vendor management and vendor negotiation and dealing with problems and support from across your vendors. So you're going to be dealing with a lot of negotiations with stakeholders, vendors. So you're going to have some good stakeholder management skills, negotiation skills, and vendor management skills. And they're your key soft skills. That and obviously good communication skills, because we're going to have to communicate across organizational boundaries. And we're going to have to collect information, and we're going to get that information mostly verbally. These things take an investigation. We ask a question, we get an answer. Based upon the answer, we ask 2 or 3 more questions. Based upon those questions, we ask 2 or 3 more questions until we get very deep into what we need to know, because as architects, we're consultants. But you're there. So obviously, we have a enterprise architect development program, and I've trained lots of enterprise architects that work in a lot of great companies. The alternative is you're not going to train, if you didn't train with us, would be to learn your networking, your data center, and your cloud from an architectural perspective, and then get an MBA and really learn these business acumen functions. I can tell you what I did is I went and got an MBA on my way to being an enterprise architect. And after that, I went to extensive executive and leadership and presentation and CXO relevancy training. And that's one of the reasons I created this course, because I know most people can't afford that several $100,000 education to get to be an enterprise architect. And I think this is the best job in the world. And I love it. And my goal was to make these options available to everyone. But I can tell you, Cloud Doctor, whichever path you take, it's one of the best jobs in the entire world. It's a great life. We're highly respected. We're well paid. And it's the easiest of all the tech jobs I've ever had, because to me, it's a lot easier to have a conversation with someone than it is to actually be trying to fix things that are actually broken. John Doe, in recent months, you've noticed a greater need for AI talent from recruiters. Yes, you're aiming for an architect role. How relevant would it be for you to add Gen AI skills to your portfolio? Generally speaking, it would be great if you're developing the right AI skills. So if you want to be an architect and you're developing AI skills, which is assessing an organization, understanding the organization's needs, learning what problems that organization has, where their business processes, where their goals are. And then you're going to be evaluating what technologies you can use to make that business better. And you're learning that, that's going to be great. Now, when it comes down to generative AI architectures, if you're thinking about things like what do your data hygiene practices need to look like? For example, what are your data normalization kind of practices? What are your data sources? What is your level of data quality? What are your databases that you're actually using? What type of AI model are you going to use? A small language model, a large language model? Are you going to use agentic AI versus another approach to your AI? How will you build your model? How will you train your model? What kind of compute does your model need? If you're learning that, that's architecture, and that's going to be a big help. But if you're learning Gen AI Python skills or R programming skills or stuff like that, that will be of no benefit to you, because as architects, we don't touch the technology. We design the technology. So it all depends on what you're doing. I can tell you I'm training many cloud architects, and I'm recommending that they add 2 sets of skills to their capabilities. If I'm dealing with a general architect, like a cloud architect, I want them to enhance their skills on security and AI. or pick a focus and become an expert on one. I can definitely tell you that, because everything we do is going to be AI enabled at this point, and people haven't even began to see it. If we look at the actual forces of business, they're actually people, they're actually processes and technology. And while enterprise architecture is all involved in people, processes, and technology, let's talk about things that can work. Google's generating 25% of its code with AI right now. Google. Now, what is the implications of that? That means the developer needs to be really good, for example, a lot better than the AI. And it means that a great developer with AI can probably clunk out 3, 4, 5 times the code. Because what happens in many of these companies is the top 5 or 10% do most of the work. So if you think about that, an organization is going to be very intent on adding AI to speed up their development. Just like, for example, Microsoft CEO just said, and I agree with him, that SaaS market is dead, is over, the software as a service market, because organizations very soon in the next year or 2, 3 will be having all their applications coded by AI. So why are they going to buy or rent any kind of anybody else's software? So if we think about that, what is the implications of that? So employee productivity has been rather low recently. AI can enhance productivity, so every employer is very keen on that. The other side of it is costs and finding people that are wanting to work and really willing to work. AI can handle that. So again, it's a big business thing. Now, AI can help a lot with the business in terms of making forecasts. What would the sales be like given XYZ projections and XYZ scenarios and market factors? And AI can help an organization make better predictions, which can make an organization, if they manufacture things or have a supply chain, tune that to have just enough inventory that's in time. Gen AI could help our various AI programs, and analytics could be really looking at the way people drive trucks, and they can find more efficient fleets, maps and fleets, so people can get to their places quicker, service more clients in the same amount or less time, and potentially do it safer. So every business is looking to achieve with AI, because now it's people, processes, and technologies. But the reality is it might be people, AI agents acting as people, processes, and technologies, if you wanted to extrapolate the AI agents out of AI. And so that's where it almost gets more interesting and more interesting. So I would definitely add some AI skills, but here's where you really need to think about it long-term in your career, is what is the ultimate goal of your career? Where are you trying to go? If you're trying to go in much more into a chief architect role or a CIO role, now what you need is even greater business acumen and greater leadership skills. If your focus is on digital transformation, again, it's mostly going to be your business and your leadership skills. But now every kind of additional piece of knowledge you have becomes an additional tool that you can use, that you can think of. So again, it could be fairly helpful. But if your goal is to focus on something and be really great at something, let's say security architecture was your focus and you loved it and you wanted to live, eat, breathe, and sleep security architecture, that's when I need you to focus more on security architecture and less about AI. Now, I still would need that person to think about the security implications of AI and how to protect the organization from AI and what kind of data could or would be shared by AI and all those other things that are there, because AI will still be part of it. But in certain careers, if your goal is to be an expert on a subject matter, you've got to focus on straight that one subject matter. So that's really the key, is what exactly do you want to go with? What exactly is your goal? And that's how we figure it. We drill down very deep into the exact goal, the skills that are not only going to get you in there now, but it'll get you to your career goals in 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. And that's really what really goes into building a career plan. So what's your goal? But generally speaking, AI, I think everybody needs to learn now. John Doe, you watched my video about TOGAF. How relevant is it for architects? And how relevant is it for cloud security architect careers? So I kind of have always had a mixed feeling about TOGAF, because most people don't actually understand what it actually is. So what is TOGAF? What is an enterprise architecture framework? It's really basically a checklist of the steps to success to doing something. And if I were to pull that out one layer, so the best way I can describe it is in my youth, both my wife and I practiced internal medicine. We're both nurse practitioners. Now, I practiced internal medicine for a little while and then dealt with orthopedic and musculoskeletal and patients that had problems with their feet, their knees, their ankles, their hips, their back. And then my wife continued in an internal medicine practice. Now, why am I telling you this? Because one day my wife asked for help and I went into her practice one day, or the doctor had asked for help, something happened, and my wife saw the way I was examining people. And I was talking to them, and then I was starting with their feet and working the way up to the head, because that's the way I would do that in a world where somebody might have back pain, which could be coming from the big toe, the foot, the ankle, the knee, the hip, what have you. And my wife did the normal internal medicine thing, which was start from the eyes, then go to the ears, then the nose, then the throat, then the neck, then the lungs, then the heart. It was her process, top down. And she said, if Mike, what you're doing is great in orthopedics, but what I need you to do is head to toe. And it was, okay, that's the process. So TOGAF or any of these things, it's just a process. Step 1, hey, remember to look at the business vision. Step 2, hey, make sure you understand the business architecture. And step 3, how do you want the business architecture to be in the future? And then step 4, okay, what is our, what is our current technology environment, data environment, etc. look like? And will it get us to our future goals? And if not, how do we adapt to it? So that's a process. That's a framework. So TOGAF doesn't teach architects, but TOGAF does give you a step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and that is absolutely brilliant. And why is it, John Doe? And why is it that I like TOGAF and that stepwise framework? What if I were to tell you that 70 to 80% of the time that an architect designs a solution for a company, it doesn't work? I'm going to say that again. 70 to 80% of the times an organization invests money, and I mean billions of dollars, into going to the cloud or going into a new application, that 70 to 80% of the time they get no business benefit whatsoever. That's how bad it is. And why is that? And a lot of that is because people go straight into the tech and they don't look at the business vision, or they go straight into the tech and they don't understand the business architecture, and they focus on the tech and not the business. So that TOGAF process, that checklist that says you have to start here with this business thing, you have to go figure out how it works, the business and operating it. It keeps that architect on track so they don't do what they may want to do, which is go look at the tech, especially if they come from a tech background instead of a business background. So that's why it tends to be very relevant. So I don't care if someone learns a TOGAF enterprise architecture framework. I don't care if someone learns a Zachman enterprise architecture framework or a Gartner enterprise architecture framework. I just care that the architect uses a methodical step-by-step approach every single time to understand where that business wants to go, so you can strategically develop a plan on how to get there. I care that the architect understands the way the business operates and needs to operate and wants to operate, so the architect doesn't put a new piece of technology in that changes the way people work and hurts them. That's what I care about, and I hope that makes sense. So now for security architect careers, so here's where it gets a little different. For security architect careers, here's my 3 big certifications. They are the CISSP, and that's the main one. To me, the CISSP is the intro to cybersecurity. It's the welcome to the party ticket. And it's very good at getting people interviews. And I've gotten a lot of people that have never worked in tech their first security architect job. And that was one of the certifications we used to get them an interview. And then obviously we trained them to be security architects. They got hired, which had skills outside of the CISSP. It's the CISM and it's the CCSP. This the CCSP. It's the ISC2 Cloud Certified Security Professional one. Those are the 3 big 3, and they work well. TOGAF for a security architect, probably not, because again, the security architect is that focused specialty architect, and they're going to be more concerned about protecting that organization from harm and risk. And there's much more of that in a CISSP than there would be in a TOGAF for a security architect. I kind of hope I gave you the perspective of TOGAF for architects in general, and then also for security architects. Tyrone, you can bring in the next one, and please ask questions if you desire. If you have no tech experience, only customer experience, which GoCloud program would I recommend for an architect role? Dorian, it would completely determine based upon what architect role you desire. If your goal was to be a cloud architect or a solutions architect, I would recommend our Cloud Architect Career Development Program, because we've gotten people hired at everybody you can imagine in that program, and plenty of people that had absolutely no tech background first. And that's the Cloud Architect Career Development Program. Now, if your goal was to be an enterprise architect, which is more of a business executive and a slightly less technical architect, then I would recommend our Enterprise Architect Career Development Program. Now, if you wanted to be a artificial intelligence architect, I would recommend our Generative AI Architect Program. And Dorian, you'll be fine in any one of these things. You're being hired, should be hired from any one of these things, provided you do the work and you study and you come to class. The question is, where do you want to be? And all of these roles are great. If you're interested into the generic infrastructure of your hybrid multi-cloud architectures, the cloud architect role is wonderful. It's just wonderful. And you could be like Ivan Tambo, who went to AWS in a cloud architect role, and it was his first tech job. You could be like Jeffrey, who went to Kalian as his first tech job. You could be like Balwinder, who was a stay-at-home mom who got hired by Microsoft as a cloud architect, or she would call their cloud solutions architect. You could be like Al, who was a sales rep who got hired by Deloitte as a senior solutions architect as out of this program. And it's a great program, and I can tell you so many more. But, you know, I also have people like Wallace Agana, and there was a YouTube video of him on our YouTube channel. You can see him, who got hired as an enterprise architect with our training. And his last job was a sales rep. There's Jermaine, who was selling landscaping gear before his first enterprise architect job. So you can do that too. So the question is, when it comes to any of these careers, which one do you want? And then it's about getting the skills for that. But yes, we could train you in any of them. Now, I will happily answer any more questions if you can tell me about specific goals or desires you want. But I'll also have a completely free webinar tomorrow, and it will be on Zoom. And I'd love to meet you. You can ask me questions live. I can ask you questions live and find something that would be great for you and maybe help you find the best fit or what you would love the most. Because any of these things would be great. Amer, you're just starting to learn cloud from the basics. Can someone tell me what would be the ideal roadmap to grow and build a career in cloud services? Okay, Amer, good. The first I'm going to tell you is you have to determine what you want to do. Because you can start anywhere you want. There are no rules whatsoever. You could be like Noah, for example, who was a social worker, who got his first job as a solutions architect after we trained him, or Vladimir, who after we trained him got his first job as a solutions architect. You could be like Zam Cam, and I can't think of his last name exactly, who came to us to be a cloud engineer, and we got him his first job as a cloud engineer. Although we don't train cloud engineers anymore. In the world of AI, I don't recommend cloud engineering careers. I recommend cloud architect careers, because architecture careers cannot be taken or by AI. It's the interpersonal relationship and the human-to-human work of architecture careers that make it so special that AI creates more jobs for us, not less. But you have to figure out what you want to do. For example, if you wanted to be an architect, and we as architects design solutions to optimize people's business performance, which means meeting with clients, giving presentations, helping to sell a solution, leading an architecture team, facilitating meetings, and you get that skill, you'll be great, and that will be fine. And you could get that as your first job. You could also say, I want to be a system builder. And for that, you could train to be a cloud engineer. And you could do that as your first job. But we need to know the skills, and here's the reason I'm going to tell you. For a cloud architect, I need someone with sales skills, executive presence, lots of emotional intelligence, good presentation skills, good leadership skills, and knowledge of how to design systems on network, the data center, the cloud, knowledge of server virtualization, compute, storage, that kind of thing. Now, that's a cloud architect. Now, the cloud architect will never be touching the technology. By comparison, a cloud engineer, now that person is going to be building, tuning, and performance optimizing. So that cloud engineer will still need to understand networking, data center technology, But now that cloud engineer is going to have to be an expert on the command line. They're going to have to be an expert with infrastructure as code. The cloud engineer is going to be installing applications. So they're going to need to understand Linux and how to install applications on Linux and how to manage Linux and manage Linux permissions, potentially patch kernels and other things in Linux. If they're a cloud engineer, that cloud engineer will need to know how to automate, meaning bash shell scripting in Linux. They'll need to know how to automate with Python scripting. They'll need to know Windows administration and Windows systems administration and Windows PowerShell scripting and Terraform scripting and DevOps tools. You see, the architect needed a bunch of executive skills and design skills and knowledge of the underlying technology. And quite frankly, it's usually easier for me to get someone a cloud architect job, which pays much more than a cloud engineering job in less time, than it is to get someone their first cloud engineering job, which is typically very hard because there's so much tech to learn. But some people don't want to be in front of the customer. They want to sit behind a desk and code and configure. And if that's the case, that's good too, because we need people in the world that can do that. So the ideal roadmap is to pick the career you want and then get the exact skills, and only the skills for your need, and then master those skills, and you will have a job like you can't even imagine, because it is so hard to find someone that's actually competent. So, Amy, which type of career would you like? What's your goal? Do you want to be a designer and a planner? Do you want to be a builder? That's going to determine what your goals are. So let me know what your goals are, and then I can help you build a plan. And I just want to make it clear that there might be 100 different jobs that you could have in cloud computing, so maybe more. I just want to make sure we get you the right one that's going to make you happy. What is the estimated time to be interview ready if dedicating at least 20 hours a week of study time? Well, Darian, it depends on how good your training is and where you're getting your training. For example, I've taken people that have done 3 years of training, and they put 20, 30, 40 hours a week, but they wanted to be an architect, and they learned Python, and they learned Linux, and they learned DevOps, which was studying and training in someone else's career. And then we had to completely start them from scratch, and then they got hired and did very well. So I will tell you that on average in a normal economy, it takes about 8 to 12 months, training approximately 20 hours a week from experience. But, Dorian, I've seen some people that were much faster. Richard O went to AWS in like 3 weeks. Now, that was an anomaly. And I want to say it was pretty accurate. Joe M., who was a double CCIE from Cisco, we worked together. We got him a senior solutions architect job at AWS within a month. Again, that's an oddity. I then have had plenty of people that spend about 6 months to get hired. I've got plenty of people that take 8, 9, 10, or 12 months to get hired. And every once in a while, I get someone that needs a little longer. And something goes on in their life. Or they're slow to pick up one thing, but they're super fast to pick up other things. Or maybe they've been in tech for so long as an engineer, and now they need to learn a different way of thinking. And now going from building to planning is a tougher thing. And now the person has to learn to give a lot of presentations and sell, and it's a new thing. And sometimes it takes a little longer. But I can tell you, when people train with us, they can stay in the program until they're hired. We give people a year in the live classes, in the online parts of the program, like all of our videos and the communities. That's all permanent as long as somebody needs it, because we want them to be hired and we want them to have that for the rest of their career to beat it. So I'd say 8 to 12 months is around normal. Now, in a really fast economy, it'll be faster because some players become less selective. In a really tough economy where players hire less, it's typically a little longer. But all in all, about 8 to 12 months with the right kind of training to get someone a job in this field. Do I have cloud architect interview questions? I've got a lot of cloud architect interview questions. Tyrone, we've got 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 videos of cloud architect interview questions. Drop links to them in the chat box. Not only did I make some, but David Lithicum also made some. And together we made them. So I've made about 100. David Lithicum did about 30 in it with me one day. So we've got lots of cloud architect interview questions. Tyrone, you can go to the next one. Any thoughts on how you build enterprise architecture momentum utilizing a bottom-up and top-down approach while having limited resources, i.e. 1 to 2 people? Yeah. Learn to delegate and have really good leadership skills. So the key here is your effectiveness as an enterprise architect is how much can you manage? So we're really in one of two places. You can be one person with a ton of experience, or you can be one person that gets 50 people that all have varying levels of education and experience to work with you. That's what I would do. And I'll tell you, John, I can tell you the biggest architectures that actually built my career were not the areas where I was actually an expert. And as crazy as it sounds, I got known and received numerous promotions that came out of a voice architecture for one of the world's largest banks. And I remember when I was introduced to this bank and they said, Mike, they need a new unified communication system that's going to give them voice, video, integration with all these other applications. And your name came up. And I remember saying to the leadership team, I said, I can lead this. I said, but just I want to remind you that, I have no voice background, no voice experience. They're like, video. I'm like, yeah, video, voice, kind of different, unicast, multicast. And I can remember them saying, well, okay. Now, what I actually did was then I looked and started building my architecture team. And this was about 20 years ago. And this is when that really changed my career, which is why I'm telling you about it. I found all the smartest voice people I could find. I found all the good server people because they were sitting on Windows servers. So I found Windows people to get involved in this. I found experts on quality of service because I knew we knew some form of queuing. Even though I was a network architect, I brought in an additional network architect. I brought in a security architect to lock this thing down. I brought in so many of these things. And the reason I did that is I wanted to make sure that we got everything. Now, I brought that team in. They baselined the organization's things. We found the vision and where the company's goals were. The customer gave us about a 358-page, and I'm not joking, RFP full of questions. The team and I delivered our several thousand-page response to this RFP, and then we went back, and there was a proof of concept, which I led, and the team of people would come in and build it and test it. Meanwhile, I'd be maintaining relationships with a client and the team back home and doing those kind of things. And in the end, that one deal basically changed my career, and it changed my career trajectory. And it was all based on something that I didn't know until the end of that architecture. And that's when I really learned what was different. And I didn't even know it at the time, John, what I was doing in the leadership skills, because it just felt natural to me. One day, one of the VPs from this big tech company came down. And VPs in this tech company were responsible for about $1 billion of sales or more. And one day the VP came down and visited me on the customer site for this enterprise architecture. And I said to the VP, I said, I hope you're not offended. I wanted to invite you to lunch with me and the team. And the VP is like, thank you so much. And I said, I like to take this team out. They've been working, 12 hours a day. So I try to take them to lunch, talk to them, see if they have any challenges, questions, frustrations, or stresses, and try to solve them and then get everybody back to work. And I said, I usually try to take them for drinks. And the VP said, thank you for inviting me. And oh, by the way, can I join you for drinks this evening? So go, we do our job. We do these things. I take everybody for drinks. I come back to the office and I got told, Mike, I can't believe what kind of leader you are. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, the way you were looking after your team and taking care of your team and addressing their stresses and their needs. He says, that's why you're going to win this deal. And then ultimately I did. But that was the biggest lesson for me. But it wasn't what I could do. It was what the actual team could do. So the first thing that I'd be doing is I'd be going and having some good conversations with the leadership. And I'd prep for these meetings so I knew what to ask, why I was asking it. I had all my ducks in a row. I'd start trying to have lunches and dinners and drinks with the people you'll be working with so you can learn them and start developing relationships with them. I'd go out there and offer help to others and receive help from others. I would do favors for others, but I would really start to learn the people. learn the organization and start building relationships. Because that's going to be the most important thing you can do initially. Because that's going to give you the relationships that are going to be necessary for you to do what you need to do later, which is asking questions and getting an honest answer, for example, especially since 70 to 80% of the time the architecture previously failed before you got there. So you're going to have to ask questions and not make people feel bad at the same time. You're going to need that relationship to get help when you do things. You're going to need those relationships to get information when you need it, because people will be much more likely to give you information when they're comfortable with you. And you're going to need those relationships when it's time to get expertise or push or something through. And you're going to need the relationship with the stakeholders to get them to support your architectures. Because if the stakeholders don't support your architectures, no matter how good the tech is, it's going to die. So that's what you're really doing with that. So first, I'd focus on building relationships, and I'd focus on learning the key players. And I'd learn that organization system first and how it works. I'd be mapping out business processes if they don't have it mapped. I'd be trying to baseline current systems, figure out what they have, what they don't have, figure out what kind of applications they have, how the applications are being used, what are the processes, because I bet you're going to find a lot of quick wins. There'll be applications they have, they don't use. They'll be having applications that they use for one thing, and they have 10 other applications that could do the same thing and better. And now they're dealing with integration challenges. You'll be surprised what you find areas of opportunity. You'll dive deep into security, and you'll find things that will horrify you. So then it'll be a matter of, developing risk mitigation and practices and procedures, and then you'll be looking for things. If you evaluate deep enough and bring in people, you'll look at the networking, and you'll find ticking time bombs in most architectures. So then again, it's going to be getting people to look at that and figure out what you need and figure out what you need to do about it. I mean, hopefully it's all great, but usually it's not. Usually is. So these are usually the kind of things. And it's about keeping good notes and good documentation and really learning it. And then you'll have these relationships. You'll understand the current systems. And then when it comes to doing things, it'll be a lot easier because you'll have an understanding. John, I hope that kind of helps you. Please feel free to ask a second, or a tertiary question based upon that if you desire. Course videos will be accessible for a lifetime, or it will be time bound. No, we don't bound anything with time around here. We're not in the rental business or the subscription business. We sell courses, and we have people, we expect people to stay on these courses and continue the course until they're hired. Because anytime we sell a course to someone, we want to change their life. Now, we can provide the best education in the world, but the person has to do the work. And I also understand that not everybody can do everything as easy as others. For example, when I paid my way through college, I actually had a full-time job and 2 part-time jobs at the same time. That made it a little harder to go to college. It took me 5 years instead of 4. But I still paid my way through. I got done. So we don't keep anything time-bound around here. We just want to change your life if you buy any of our training. I kind of hope that helps. And please join us on a webinar and learn more. What about transitioning into a cloud architect? What will you need to know before getting into the program? So I believe in my heart that anyone can be anything they want with the right training. I also fundamentally believe, and I know from my medical background, that humans are born knowing absolutely nothing, which means humans have zero instincts. We wouldn't even be able to survive 3 days without our parents or some adult caring for us, because we were born knowing nothing. Now, my cat, by comparison, she was actually born with instincts and potentially could survive on her own, potentially. But humans cannot survive without baby humans, because we are not born with any knowledge or anything. Now, I want you to realize that means that no one was born an airplane pilot. No one was born a cardiothoracic surgeon. No one was born an attorney. No one was born a cloud architect. You just have to get trained. So what would you need to know before you have to get in the program? Nothing. Because how would you know what to learn to be a cloud architect if it's a job you've never had in your life? So with us, we assume you come with absolutely zero. And here's the reason. You might be a programmer and know 1% of the other 99% of the things 1% of the 99% of the things we do. And that's great that that person knows the 1%, but the programmer typically won't know compute. They typically won't know storage. They won't know networking. They won't security. They won't know enterprise applications. Well, they probably, and generally speaking, they'll know how to program. So, for example, no matter where you come from into an architect role, chances are, you've got to start predominantly from scratch. You'll have some background, but not a lot of it. So we start everybody from the beginning, which means no matter what your background is, if you do the work, you should be hired. And if you were Pierre, who was in Canada, he was working on sailboats and maintaining sailboats. He got his first job as a solutions architect at Lease Web. And he did it because he got the right training, and he continued every single day until he was hired. And I know you can too. Scott M. got hired at Nimbus. Again, it was his first job because he got hired because we trained him and he had the really good skills. For example, Delroy Bad got hired at CDW. It was his first tech job as a cloud security architect after our training. It happened because he was well trained. Before that, he was working on ambulances as an emergency medical technician. So I don't need you to know anything before you get here. I need you to attack this program. Well, that's not true. I need you to be able to read. I need you to be able to listen. And I need you to be willing to learn. I do need that. I need you to be willing to do the work. But it goes to my basis that anybody can learn anything. So we'll give you all the foundations on the tech. Then we'll give you all the architecture components and underlying technology. Then we'll teach you how to put the technology designs together. And then we'll teach you the entire architecture career. Then we'll teach you the business, leadership, sales skills, executive skills, whatever you're going to need. Again, that'll be all included too. We're even going to teach you how to build your resume, your LinkedIn profile, and even how to interview for the job and negotiate a higher salary, because I want you hired. But I don't need you to have anything right now other than a good attitude, a good level of energy, enthusiasm, and passion for the work. Because, for example, Arun S. was working at Home Depot, not in the tech role, but he got hired to TELUS as a cloud architect directly after our training. So the point is you can get a great job too. You just have to have the right skills. And if you want to train with us, we'd be honored to teach you and provide you those skills. Please feel free to ask more questions. And please feel free to join us on our webinar. It's free and meet face to face. You're a cloud architect and willing to move to AI. Could I suggest any prerequisites before moving into AI? If you're already a cloud architect, meaning you're already working as an architect, then the next phase for you, realistically speaking, is just to learn AI, and you'll be fine. Now, by an architect, I mean not someone with an architect title, but someone that's actually working as an architect. So speaking to the clients, speaking to the executives, presenting to the board, presenting at conferences, writing thought leadership documents, delivering executive briefings, writing statements of work, responding to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs, doing real architecture work. So if I've got someone that's already doing that with cloud computing, and then the only thing I need to do is add AI. And that's pretty easy. So now it's just learning the AI skills, not the engineering skills, but the AI architect skills, which are a different set of skills. Remember, engineering is about the how. Architecture is about the why. And I guess maybe I'll say this for everyone's purpose to try to make this very different. And it's the reason people struggle with things. And I actually was writing some notes for a presentation I was going to deliver somewhere else, but I think it might actually help you all. So maybe let me just pop this thing down to kind of explain it to you. So what people do, and here's where they go wrong. Let's say someone wants to become a cloud architect or an AI architect, and they go out there and they build something. And they think they're going to become an architect, but they're going to learn nothing related to the architecture. And here's what I mean. So let's say we have someone and they want to become a cloud architect. So what they do is they go to a cloud provider, and then they take a Linux web server, and then they put a Linux system, and then they put a web server application on it, like Apache Cassandra. Then they push what do you call it? Then they put a little bit HTML web page. Then they set up a DNS policy and maybe an access list security group, and they set up an internet gateway. Poof! And they did that project. Now, what did that teach the person to do? How to build that project. Now, That's great. Somebody knows how to build that. But here's what the person did not learn: anything related to the architect's job. Because while that person learned how to set up a web server, this is what the architect needed to be thinking about. What are the business goals that are associated with this project? How will the business measure the success of this product? Meaning, is it increased revenue? Is it increased customer satisfaction scores? Is it greater availability? What is the availability needs of the application? How many servers do we need? Where will the location of the servers will be? What kind of network bandwidth do we need on the servers? What will the server be serving? Static content, dynamic content, or any other associated applications or website? What type of server should we use? Nginx versus Apache versus IIS? What are the strengths and weaknesses of each one of these? How many CPU cores are we going to need for the web servers? How much DRAM will the web servers need? What are the latency throughputs of the server storage and what we can tolerate? Meaning, what kind of IOPS and what kind of throughput do we need for the application? What are the security needs of the server? How are we going to lock down that server? What is the endpoint protection we need on that server? What kind of firewall do we need for the server? How many layers of firewalls do we need for the server? Are we doing anything with the server's logs, like a SIEM systems? What is the identity strategy for the server? So as you can see, or I hope you can see, in one case, we're talking that's actually about how do I build, which is going to teach me building skills, which is why it's often hard for people with building skills to become architects, but they can after they learn a different way of thinking. So that's really what I'm trying to talk about. So let's talk about those AI things that you would actually need to learn, going from a working cloud architect, assuming you're working doing the things that we're describing, because that's what you'll be doing as an AI architect, then speaking as a cloud architect, then speaking as an AI architect. So what are these skills? Well, you're going to obviously need to have an understanding of a wide range of availability, security, tuning, systems, infrastructure, but you're going to need obviously network design skills. You may have some as a cloud architect. You'll need some cloud design skills. You should have that as a cloud architect. Some data center design skills. If you're doing any cloud repatriation project, you should definitely have that. Now, here's where you're going to need to know more. You're going to need to have much greater knowledge on data design, much more knowledge on governance, compliance, and ethics. Now, here, instead of learning how to go build this stuff, really focusing on the types of databases that exist and how each one of them could be best used in an application. Start thinking about the type of training data, the quality of training data, the data hygiene practices for what the kind of training data would be, what kind of inference engines you should be using, what kind of AI models you should build, large language, small language, for example. What kind of AI model will you be training? What will you be training it on? How many CPUs, GPUs, or TPUs kind of thing are you going to be training that on? How are you going to be testing that model? How is the AI operations going to work in your business? So those would be the things that you would need to add to go from a cloud architect to an AI architect. It's really focused on that, on those things. So that's what you would need to know if you're already working as a cloud architect now, is that just those AI specific skills, because meeting with the organization is going to be the same. The presentation skills for the architects are going to be the same. The CXO relevancy needs of the architects are going to be the same. The sales skills of the architects are going to be the same. The leadership skills of either set of architects is going to be the same. So that's why I'm saying it's only those things that you would need to add. Good question. Need a cloud architect roadmap. So I don't know what you mean by that. Would you like to know where you would take the cloud architect to? Because for me, and for the people that I work with, their first job is a cloud architect. Sometimes it's an enterprise architect, sometimes it's a solutions architect, but that's their first job. And I've got people hired all over the world. I even got another reference check meeting today, and what happens is the employer makes a decision and they check their references, and I got another reference check to fill in today from a student of mine that got hired and didn't even tell me they were interviewing. So I'm happy to give his reference check because he participated very well. But what do you mean? So let's talk about where you could go from the cloud architect career, assuming that's your first job because you train properly. Now, as a cloud architect, you've got, realistically speaking, two ways you can take your career. And I've taken it both ways. The first way is you can become very good at what you do as an architect. You can develop your subject matter expertise in a various form of architecture, and you can really master it. And while everybody else is learning other people's job, like Python coding and development, you're really mastering that career. So, for example, cloud security, if that was your career, you would master cloud computing, you would master securing the cloud, and you'd be thinking about all the technologies that could secure that cloud, the policies, procedures, the technical controls, the detective controls, and every kind of thing. And you were thinking and mastering the kinds of training you could use and trying to improve your clients' people and awareness campaigns that you knew, and you developed your risk management skills and you got great at them. And then you got really good at understanding the types of firewalls and how the firewall algorithms work and how they each test various types of code, and got really knowledgeable in the various identity systems and what they do, and the various types of SIEM systems that exist out there and data loss prevention system, and got really good on demilitarized zoning design, for example, and cryptography. And you master that. Now that could easily take you to a senior solutions architect job, principal, or distinguished architect job. And that is a big job with director level pay. And that's what I did in the first 2 years of my career. I started my career, I was an architect within 3 months. And within 2 years, I was a principal architect. And it was great. Now, the other way you could take your career, which is ultimately what I did, is the executive architect pathway. And in the executive architect pathway, you basically still develop good cloud architect skills. But once your cloud architect skills are good, instead of spending more time enhancing your technology skills, now you enhance your business skills. You enhance your business knowledge. You enhance your leadership skills. You enhance your executive presence. You enhance your emotional intelligence. You enhance your CXO relevancy and your sales skills. Now this takes you into enterprise architect roles, chief architect roles, which are enterprise architect roles, CIO roles, which typically pay more than if you focused on the technology itself. So the question really is, do you want to take your architecture career in a technical direction? And you can, or you can take your architecture career in a more business-oriented direction. Now, I can tell you, statistically speaking, if you take your career in a more business-oriented direction, you will typically earn more. But at that point, it's all realistically speaking, what you want to do, what's going to make you happy. Because when it really comes down to career success, you have to love what you do. I love what I do. I'm having some back issues right now that are making it challenging to find a position that's comfortable. But I'm still here answering career questions because I love it. It's not work for me. And when something is not work for you, you'll go in, you'll work hard to master it. You don't even realize you're working. You just love it. You do it. And that's what I found in enterprise architecture, that I just loved it so much that it was, ooh, let's go attend this symposium over here and learn this. Let's go attend this course. Let me go meet with this executive coach because I just wanted to be better. And as I got better, I watched my career go up and up and up. So realistically speaking, it's there. But, that's the path to your two career options. You can go down the executive path, and that architect role could turn into a VP role, an SVP role, an executive vice president role. You can move into a CIO role or a CTO role. You could take a chief architect role, which is kind of a cross between a CIO and it's a heavy enterprise architect with lots of business acumen. And some of those roles pay $500,000 to $1 million a year too. So there's a lot of good opportunities that you can go to. The question is just, where do you want to go? But typically speaking, you've got much more upside focusing on the business than you do the tech. Saddest thing in the world, because I love the tech, but I learned that early in my career and started focusing more on the business, and it changed my career to the upside so much more. Please feel free to ask more or go deeper. Thank you for the detailed explanation. As per the self-assessment, you want to work as a cloud engineer for in your future. Once you progress in that, you can think of a cloud architect. Is that correct? So, Amy, I really want you to think about it this way. If you learned how to fly an airplane today, would you be a better lawyer tomorrow? Because cloud engineering will not teach you how to be a cloud architect. It will teach you nothing related to being a cloud architect. It will teach you how to be a cloud engineer. And, I don't always talk about it. So I'll give you 2 examples. Naformi was a student of mine with about 15 years of cloud engineering. About 8-9 months after our training, he got hired as a cloud architect. Now, I'll also tell you Jawad, he came to me. He'd been a cloud engineer about 8 years, and about 8 months of training, I got him hired as a cloud architect for AWS. And Harsh had been a cloud engineer for a little over a decade, and after about 13 months of training, he got a cloud architect job. And all these people are awesome, by the way. But what if I told you that Ivan Tamba went from a college student working as a waiter to hired by AWS as a solutions architect in 6 months? Or Jordan Kay, his best friend, also got hired by AWS in our training in 6 months. And why is that? Because in our 6 months, we taught somebody how to be an architect. And if you become an engineer first, you're going to have to learn, you're going to learn a completely different way of thinking. And that different way of thinking, you're going to have to then unlearn to become a cloud architect. So I think the key to really remember is learning somebody else's job is not going to be helping you with your job. And often it's just as hard to unlearn engineering to become an architect. So here's why. Learning how to engineer is learning how to build. And if I give you a list, and Amory, I really want to help you because, I'm going to give you a list of I'll tell you 20 or 30 of the 50 things that we actually do as an architect. Now, one of the things we do is we analyze the current IT systems and infrastructure. Now, that means us bringing in a team of engineers that are going to baseline these systems and deliver a report to us architects that we can evaluate, because we architects don't touch the technology. Now, we're going to be designing future state architecture models. Now, future state architecture models, Amory, include what is the process of an architecture, not just the tech itself. So, for example, let's say we have a company that's got a website and they desire to increase the performance of that website by selling more. And they reach out to a cloud architect to do this and say, we've got a website and we want to sell more. The architect needs to understand from the executives the vision for that organization, where they want the business to go. The architect then needs to understand, how do they sell on that website? What is the process to get people to the website? And can we automate that or improve that? What is the workflow of the user on the website? How many clicks do they need to get to the goal? What's the process to actually sign into that website? Is that causing customer satisfaction or customer dissatisfaction? Now, that website itself, what could we do to it? Could we make it a little prettier? Could we do something to increase the amount of time someone's going to dwell on that page? Are there things that we can look at? Does that organization, Amory, have data? And does that organization have a lot of data on that customer and that customer's buying patterns, as well as cookies that are in that customer's browser? Now, can that organization use that data plus those cookies and then use AI to make a recommendation? Mike, I see you're shopping here for dates and figs, but you know what? We've got some Turkish apricots. Would you like that while you're here? And maybe offer me a special coupon so I buy more. So as an architect, you're going to be thinking about that. Now, as an architect, you're then going to be thinking about, what are the back-end systems? What kind of data systems we have? What kind of data quality do we have? Do we need to collect new data to make this possible? What kind of a model should we use? How are we going to train the model? And then we're going to have to look at that, and we're going to have to look at the cost of it. And then we're going to have to look and see if the people have the sophistication to actually build it, operate it, and maintain it. If not, what kind of people will that organization need to buy or hire to do that? Now, what kind of training will the people of that organization need to be able to use that system? Now, we will have to present that solution, sell that solution, design the system. Now, none of that is going to benefit from the fact that we might have learned to code or configure earlier in our life. And Amory, that's why the people that do all the hands-on projects never get hired as architects. And that's why the people that design buildings, which are called architects, don't learn how to build buildings first. Because learning how to build a building teaches you how to build it, not how to design it. It's the same reason why the people that fly the airplane aren't asked to design airplanes. And Amory, it's the same reason that I'm going to tell you right now. I bet you use your computer every day, right? Probably use a computer. You type on a computer. You how to use an internet browser. You sell email. You'd work email on your browser and you'd use it, right? But none of that user experience is going to give you potentially what you need to know. Now, by comparison, if you've got 10,000 hours on something, you're considered an expert. So you probably use your computer 10,000 hours in your life. That would make you an expert, right, when using your computer. So, Amory, I would ask you, could you tell me what the motherboard of that computer does? Could you tell me what the CPU does? Could you tell me the impact of the level 1, level 2, and level 3 cache on your CPU's performance? Could you tell me the frequency of each core on that CPU? And could you tell me how many cores that go together? Could you tell me at what point that processor will throttle itself or slow itself down due to heat? Could you tell me how that processor interacts with the system DRAM that's sitting on the side of that motherboard? Could you tell me how the number of PCI lanes on that CPU would impact how many GPUs I could put in that for a machine learning environment and machine learning performance? Could you tell me what type of interface you should actually use to get to your storage? Should it be SCSI, iSCSI, NVMe, SATA, SAS? So all of that we would need to think about in terms of what kind of server performance would we need. And see, all that's going to be missing if you learn to be a cloud engineer, because the cloud engineer is going to learn how to and how to do. And we're going to have to learn why. So, Amy, if your desire was to go work as a cloud engineer, you'd have to get one set of training to be a cloud engineer. And that would be much harder, generally speaking, to be a cloud architect. And in a year from now, you're going to have to unlearn all those engineering things and then learn how to be an architect. Or 2 years from now, and 3 years from now. Because while I'm an architect, I need to be an expert in delivering a presentation. I need to be able to sell. I need to be able to lead a team. I need to be able to build a business case. I need to learn how to respond to an RFI, RFP, RFQ. I need to learn how to write thought leadership documents. I need to learn how to create an ROI model. I need to know how to map out business processes. I need to know how to create a design. I need to know how to manage stakeholders. I need to know how to manage vendors. Now, what skills does the cloud engineer need to know? They need to know the command line of the cloud providers. They need to know Terraform and infrastructure as code. The cloud engineer needs to know how to automate with Python. That cloud engineer needs to have good Linux skills and how to install applications, manage permissions, mount drives, automate in Linux, do some bash shell scripting. That cloud engineer will need to understand Windows and understand Windows PowerShell and Windows scripting. That cloud engineer will need to know Python. Now, everything I just talked about for the cloud engineer doesn't provide any benefit to the architect. But I'm going to tell you right now, all those skills are hard, and they're even harder to learn than how to become an architect. So think about that you're going to be learning the job of somebody else, and then think about how that would help you in your future. And then think again, if learning to be an airplane pilot would make you a better physician or an attorney. Because that's exactly what it is. It's learning someone else's job. I love engineers. I respect engineers. I respect airplane pilots. I respect physicians. I respect everyone. But learning someone else's job doesn't make it easier to learn your job. It just makes it harder, because now you've got to unlearn the previous job and learn how to think a different way. Hope that helps you. My 18-year-old daughter's goal is to become a cloud architect. What's your recommendation roadmap be for someone so young? Dorian, I'm going to give you a couple examples. And then I'm going to give you an example of someone that's actually your daughter's age. And I'm going to recommend a video that you can see. So Tyrone, please share the video of Daniel Boso on how he became a cloud architect. And Dorian, he was our student. He was 19 years old when he came to us, and he was 20 years old by the time he was hired by JP Morgan Chase as a solutions architect. Great kid. Actually, he's not a kid anymore, but I think you know what I mean. I can tell you Mitchell G was another person I worked with. I found him in the gym when he was 16 years old. And Mitchell said to me, Mike, I want a tech career. I want to be like you. And we ultimately got him trained up in networking and security during the summers, during winter vacations, during any time that he actually had. And then after that, he got hired for a big he got hired for a big Japanese internet service provider. And then he got hired at Cisco, and he's had an incredible architect career. So my recommendation for people that are young are actually a few things. One is to figure out exactly what they want. I'd be happy to talk to you, potentially train your 18-year-old daughter, just like we did Daniel Bosu. And right now I'm working with an incredibly smart person that's younger than your daughter in Pennsylvania. He's actually got some extra projects he's so good, and he's so good at his young age. I can't wait to see what happens when he actually graduates high school, because he's already got better skills than people in their 30s. He's just pretty incredible. But so my recommendation would be find what you want, and then my recommendation would be to get very good training and get it early. Again, I'd love to train your daughter. And the other training that I would say, typically speaking, is the skills that really matter in architecture are actually our human skills. So the reason I like security architecture so much, and cloud architecture so much, and enterprise architecture so much, and the reason that we had an incredible cloud engineering program, and I stopped selling the cloud engineering program and only focus on architecture careers, is this. If we're dealing with like a cloud engineer who's going to be doing some infrastructure as code writing like a Terraform script or a Python script or a Bash shell script, AI can do all of that right now. And I didn't want to train, and the key with these engineering careers is AI can already do the job. So things that used to make sense, like learning the code, they don't make sense right now because the machines can do them. What the machines can't do, which are the highest value, highest paid skills in the world, are actually our specialty human skills. So Dorian, what if I told you that statistically speaking, with average paying careers, when someone trains and works on their emotional intelligence, they typically earn $29.6 thousand more per year than individuals who don't. Why am I saying this? Because $30,000 a year starting at 18 years old is a massive difference over a 30-year career. So by the time someone's 48 years old, that you're dealing with an additional $900,000 that could be saved career-wise just from emotional intelligence training. And that's not counting the impact of, interest along the way. So there's that. The next thing that I would tell you is the architects, the reason we can't be replaced by AI is it's a people skills job. We have to talk to one executive and the next executive and the next executive and then these stakeholders and then these technology professionals, which means we have to have really good communication skills and relationship development skills and relationship management skills. And why would I say do this now? Well, again, AI can't do it. These skills are very critical for architecture roles. And when you start looking at roles that pay $200,000 or more, they all have that element of relationships, lots of likability, and being able to build a team. Again, leadership skills, because at the end of the day, AI can do their thing, but the creativity of the human mind, and when you put a bunch of people together, often in the same room, the things they can achieve by coming out with different lifestyles, experiences, and backgrounds can often be incredible. So again, that's that humanity thing. But what does that come? That comes from the ability to be able to create a meeting, get people to want to go to the meeting, which a lot of that has to do with the ability to exercise influence and persuade. A lot of what Robert Cialdini would talk about, for example, if you were to study his work, most sales reps and marketing people do. Most executives leaders do too. So there is that concept of getting people to like you, the communication. Now, when we add business knowledge, and I don't just mean the ability to read a balance sheet or a financial statement, but the ability to think deep. And obviously we teach this. Okay, if interest rates are going to go up, what does that do to the way people spend money? How does that affect, for example, the impact of that on demand? Now, what is the impact of reduced demand on prices? To be able to think 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps, 5 steps. And why are we saying this? Because that's the architect's job. Okay, if the economy is going this way, what can the business do to protect itself? Okay, it can invest in this, this, and this. It can reduce this. It can outsource to this part of the world to get past a legal thing. So there's so many things that it can do. And if you understand business and the forces of business, you'll always be on top. So I would say learn those skills and master them in addition to being an architect. Now, I would also probably go out there and get trained and get hired prior to a degree, but I'll explain to you what I mean by this. So because the degrees recently have been somewhat irrelevant, and people are coming out of school with no skills. Harvard University is having trouble with people that can even read in their program, and they're writing about it. Their students are struggling to read. So what's been going on is people have been coming out of college without real skills. So if we start looking at the big companies, the Microsofts, the Googles, I mean, pretty much anybody has dropped college degree requirements, but I still think she should get a degree. But what I would do would be get some good training, get a good tech job, get a $150,000 tech job or something like that as a first tech job. Get the employer to pay for the degree. Get a good degree in bachelor's degree in business, not tech, because you can learn the tech outside of universities better. After she graduates that, have her finish an MBA. Again, make the company pay for it. And they'll be happy to do so if she's a good performer. So now by the time she's 26 or 27 years old, she's got an MBA. She's probably in a $250,000 job or better, and she's building her career for her future. That's what I would do if it was me and if I was starting over, because at 18 years old, I had no idea. I became a nurse, then a nurse practitioner. Then I went into tech, and then I figured out what was my true love. And prior to that, I was a paramedic firefighter, which is how I paid my way through school. But if she's got someone to help her and support her, those would be the skills that I would work on, especially the attention to detail, the ability to call people and present to them and look them in the eye and really build things. And here's the reason why, Dorian. At the end of the day, there's contemporary culture, which may be sending text messages and private messages on social media. And then there's the culture of the decision makers at these businesses, which is all human to human relationship, executive things and soft skills. So the decision makers that make the decision to hire the person, or the decision makers that make the decision to buy our architecture, they want to see that we can fit into that same, we have the same communication skills, the same kind of class, etc. So that's why I recommend practicing these things, because that will make it that she can go anywhere she wants and have an almost unlimited career. I love that question, Darian, and please feel free to ask more. Seven 2D, do you have any advice for someone who's breaking to cloud computing for the first time? Absolutely. You don't have any experience in computing, but you've gotten your cloud practitioner. Great, in AWS. The first thing that I would ask you is to tell you that you have to find a career. What is it you would like to do? I'm also going to tell you that in cloud computing, it's the only type of environment where the certifications don't help that much. And here's what I mean. If I hire a Cisco certified internet expert, there's a good chance that person will know how to do the job. If I interview someone with a CISSP in security, there's a good chance that person has some good, strong security knowledge. If I interview someone with 5 or 6 cloud computing certifications, I know they've been taught the name of a service and how to configure them. The only problem is, generally speaking, I don't hire anybody for the name of a service or how to configure things. I hire people that know what needs to be configured, why it needs to be configured, what are the implications of something being configured, how to performance tune the system, the strengths and weaknesses in one technology versus another technology, the impact of doing one thing versus another. That's what I hire. So what I would say is, congratulations, you've gotten the CCP. That is a great first step. Now what we need to figure out is, what career do you want? Do you want to be a cloud architect? One set of skills. Would you like to be a cloud engineer? Different set of skills. Would you like to be a DevOps engineer? Different set of skills. Would you like to be a database administrator? Different set of skills. Would you like to be a security engineer? One set of skills. A penetration tester, an ethical hacker security engineer, a different set of skills. I hope this is starting to make sense. Do you want to be a software developer? Different set of skills. So what would you like to do? That's the biggest problem people have, is they don't know where to go and they just get a bunch of certifications. The certifications in cloud computing will get you an interview, which is beautiful, but the skills aren't going to be the real world skills. And the reason for that is 72D is that 98% of enterprises are multi-cloud and 89% of all businesses are multi-cloud, which means most of the things that you're taught in a certification, things like Elastic, ECS for container orchestration, or DynamoDB, or Amazon Aurora or AWS WAF or any of that kind of stuff. We're in a multi-cloud environment. We're not going to be using these things. We're going to be using maybe Apache Cassandra or MongoDB across 3 clouds. We'll be using an Oracle database or a MariaDB or a MySQL across 3 clouds, not an Amazon Aurora, because we can't use proprietary things. So we have to get a lot of these training things outside. So please tell me what you want to do. Architect, engineer, developer, or whatever it is. I want to help you get there, but that's going to be the secret. So we can get you the certifications, which will get you the interviews, which is good. And you're already on your way there. And then we can get you the correct set of skills to be great at your job. So not only you can get hired, but you can get hired on a higher salary. But I need to know where you're going for that. So let me know. And Tyrone, we can bring in the next one while we wait. Dingleman, good to hear from you. You were invited to a cybersecurity conference. Great. As a cloud security architect, how would I approach this event from a networking and career advancement perspective? Well, I would do a couple things. If it's a good security conference, there might be some sessions that you can actually attend and learn something that'll make you better. And that is your career enhancement, being better. Now, and that's probably the biggest thing that you're going to get out of it. Now, assuming you're there and you're getting better, there are going to be many opportunities for a cocktail hour or some other event where there's typically going to be exhibitors, etc. And that is often a very good chance to strike up a conversation with someone, especially if you can look at them and by their executive presence determine who the management is and start talking about them, and you've got a good elevator pitch, and potentially you can find a way to catch them, develop them, create a relationship, and then go in there with an elevator pitch, or better yet, schedule a time to talk to them in the future. That could be very, very, very beneficial. Building, going out with people, meeting people, having some drinks with people, potentially building relationships with people that could also refer you internally to their company will definitely help you. Especially if, you buy some people some drinks and they get a little extra happy and they like you even more, they'll be more likely to do it, unless they get so drunk that they can't remember. So you got to find that fine line, and don't ever put somebody in a place where you get them in a dangerous situation. But I think you know what I mean from a comical perspective. If they have a glass or two of wine, they're going to be more likely to like you sometimes because they're going to be more relaxed. So, taking someone for a steak and a glass of wine necessarily is not a bad thing either. But go out there, attend these conferences, ask intelligent questions, not the stump the chump questions where you're trying to ask something that sounds smart. Take a real interest, ask a question, learn something, maybe have a discussion with the expert that spoke in there, and they could be there someone in the future, and ask them about the presentation, but make it authentic. So the networking is good. The career advancement is use this as an opportunity to get better. And then instead of trying to meet 8,000 people, because it's like, oh, I got 1,000 followers and friends, but nobody that returns the person's phone call. You need to meet 5 good people, 3, 4 people at one of these conferences that will take your phone call, that will help you. That's going to be more meaningful than all of it. Hope that helps, Dingleman. And if not, please feel free to dive deeper and ask a different question, and I'll answer it a different way. Regarding enterprise architecture, how do you balance project delivery work and developing an enterprise architecture practice and center of excellence? You don't have the budget to hire anyone yet, but your company understands the value. So, you're asking me 2 things, and let me think how I want to answer this. So let me start with developing an enterprise architecture practice, and then I'll talk about the difference between setting up a center of excellence. A really good enterprise architecture practice, for the most part, is the exact opposite of setting up a center of excellence. A center of excellence is when you've got one group and they become experts at one thing, and they take care of it. Effectively, when you do that, you ultimately create a silo, and that new silo is the center of excellence. and what you're doing, and you don't mean to, but it always happens in order to create this center of excellence, you end up pulling people out of the places and segregating them from the system. So understand the implications of that. You actually go in the exact opposite than you were trying to go to. So let's talk about setting up a very good enterprise architecture practice. What do you need in this practice? The first thing that you really need is going to be extreme respect and support from the organization's executive. The CIO, definitely. The CTO, definitely. But I would say even more. You're going to have the respect of the chief financial officer. And in a perfect world, you're going to have the respect of the chief operating officer. You're definitely going to need. And hopefully you can get the respect of the CEO, because they're your decision makers. And that's the real secret. You have to be good at that. So if you've got good relationships with others, then it's really about figuring out how that organization operates. Now, what is that business architecture? Now, hopefully, John, maybe Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Cap, Gemini, Booz Allen, I don't know, somebody went in there and mapped out that business architecture. And hopefully that business architecture is going to support, is there, and the one that you find mapped out is there. You may find it in things like function process maps or other things, but there's lots of consulting ways they use to map out the business architecture. And if so, you're going to start there and figure out if it's actually true. Now, the enterprise architectural practice is only going to be as good as its inroads into the various business units and removing silos. So somehow you're going to have to go out there and find your people that own your key business units. You're going to have to find out who they are. They're your true decision makers. But you're also going to have to find your true leaders and develop relationships with them. And here's what I mean, the true leader. Have you ever seen a team, John, where there's like 10 people and there's the boss that's in charge, but everybody goes to the one person on the team that's the go-to person, that's the actual leader, even if they're not the one that's considered to be the manager? You've got to know them. And with them, you've got to really find their needs and learn them. You're going to find their challenges. And in a perfect world, you can find ways to actually help them and open this big level of communication, because when you need a new project, your project realistically is going to be coming from the following. The executives are going to say, I want something done. And then you're going to have to go there, and you're going to have to go to the various business units. And in addition to going to the various business units, you're going to have to go to these key people, and these key champions. You're going to have to turn them into champions to support your cause. Now, at the end of the day, you're going to also have to have relationships with the people that actually build it and operate it and maintain these systems. Now, John, I'm going to tell you, that's going to be the hardest part. And the reason it's going to be the hardest part is as follows, and I wish it wasn't the case. The people that actually build these systems and operate these systems, these are some of the hardest working people in the organization. They are very hardworking, and they typically earn far less than that enterprise architect. And because of that, there's often a level of animosity and resistance to give information, because they see you, the enterprise architect, as the official lightweight that doesn't know a lot about tech. And why, with you knowing nothing compared to what they know, are you getting paid? So at the end of the day, the secret to that is, and I truly feel this way, is that every one of us has an equally important job to do. Every one of us. We're all important players on the team. But you have your job to do. They have their job to do. Maybe if they, for example, don't love where they're at and want to move into a more architecture role, and you're in that role, maybe you can help them and mentor them. For example, that's what I did in my enterprise architecture role. So many of the engineers said, Mike, I'm tired of these hours. I'm tired of the stress. I want an enterprise architect job. And I'm like, okay, well, here's what we got to get you to learn. If you want to learn, I will teach you. I will build a plan. I'll teach you what I can. I'll get you the recommend training. I'll even get your manager to pay for your training. And I did. and then they got to their goals. So there is that. So try to start breaking down these boundaries. You don't need that much of a budget per se, although I'd say you could use a good lunch, dinner, and drink budget to go find people. But go out there and break down boundaries. Because as soon as you get hit with a project, now it's like, uh-oh, where do we start? It's just me. And maybe there's a second person in my enterprise architecture practice. That's where we start getting out there. So I hope that helps. And please feel free to ask a deeper question if you want. I always want to answer questions. Dingleman, you were thinking of buying a new suit for the event. How should your physical presentation be? Oh, Dingleman, what if I tell you a story and I'm embarrassed, but it's actually true? Here's the story I'm going to tell you. Anybody that knows me, Dingleman, knows that I wear a t-shirt. If I'm going to get dressed up in my home and it's not work related, I put one of these shirts on. I like my flip-flops. I like comfortable clothes. So that's me. Now, I could tell you that I've never been much of a clothes person because it's just not me. And I can tell you that I used to always go to work in a suit when my first enterprise architecture job, because I had to. And I can tell you that I had these good suits at the time. They were not cheap suits. They were what you call, medium price suits. They were about $700. They were not bad suits at all. And I can tell you, Dingleman, that I had a single manager, and every time I gave a presentation in front of that manager, my manager was like, Mike, you didn't have the executive presence. You just didn't have that gravitas, that je ne sais quoi. I don't know, Mike, something was missing. And Dingleman, I had this manager, it was about 20-some years ago. It was my first big enterprise architect job. And it was like 3 or 4 presentations where it's like good, but not good enough. And I was honestly getting stressed. And then one day I flew out to San Francisco because I was going to stay there versus San Jose this time. And we got off the airplane and my luggage was lost. And the next day I had to present to basically the head of the Navy and a whole bunch of admirals in an executive briefing. And I went, got a problem. And that wasn't the next day. It was the same day. I said, I got to go give a presentation in this executive briefing. And I don't even have a suit because I wasn't wearing it and it got lost. So Dingleman, that day, my wife and I went to San Francisco. Some guy, he says, can I help you? My wife and I said, yeah. And my wife says, he's got a meeting with some major people and he needs to look really great. Anyway, this guy pulls out a Canali suit. He picks out these shoes. He picks out this belt. He picks out a shirt and a tie. I don't know. It was like $4,000. It was ridiculous. It seemed like the most ridiculous expense I ever spent in my entire life, but I had to deliver this meeting correctly. Anyway, I get to the presentation. I deliver the presentation. I'm wearing this new suit. And my manager says, wow, Mike, that was what I was talking about. You looked right. You felt the part. You felt strong. You keep doing this, you're going to get promoted. So Dingleman, I wasn't sure. My luggage gets found the next day. I put my old suit back on and my manager says, I don't know what you did yesterday, not today, but you were much better yesterday. So I go home and I tell my wife, she's staying at the hotel with me. I'm like, dear, what do you think had happened? And she says, yesterday you looked a lot better in your suit. I said, this is crazy. And my wife says, next week, when you've got this mass health data consortium, all the Harvard hospitals together, and you've got to give a presentation, I want you to wear the good suit. So on that next presentation, Dingleman, I wear my good suit. My manager says, wow, what a good presentation. That promotion you're looking for, we can get it done. And that presentation came with it a one-time stock grant, which I could have bought a Mercedes with, just a one-time stock grant, and it was a good one. I told my wife about this. I wanted to call her my manager because I always listen to what she says, but she's my wife and I love her for 30 years now. And I asked my wife and she says, buy 3 more of these suits. So I bought 3 more of these ridiculous suits. 12 months later, another promotion. 12 months later, another promotion. And then I realized the impact of what it came down to. And then I looked at the old Harvard data back when, Harvard did a lot of research and a lot of people had a lot of respect for it. They determined that 55% of all communication is what you look like when you say something. 38% is what you sound like when you say something. and 7% is the actual content of what you say. So that means that you need to look good. Now, what does that mean? Dingleman, if you're working at one of the biggest tech companies in the world and you've got plenty of money and you can afford it, the suit makes it a good investment. By comparison, what if it's someone that doesn't have the money? Well, in this particular case, what we need to do is the following. We need to maximize what we can do out of the resources that we have, which means the person's shoes should be polished. There's not a lot of cost to that. It means the person's belt needs to be polished. It means the person's clothes, pants, suit should at least be pressed. No wrinkles, no odors. It should look good. It should look like you put some attention to detail in it. So there is that. But generally speaking, if you're going to be around a place and there's going to be a lot of executives and there's going to be a lot of hiring managers and you want to go meet people, it might not be a bad idea to get a better suit. Especially if Dingleman, I know where you're working and I know the kind of opportunity that exists inside of an organization like that. Those are things to think about as well. Hope that helps. Please feel free, Dingleman. And I know you, and that's why I'm able to give you a little more to ask more. To answer your question, you're being interested in becoming a cloud engineer, but you're also looking at the cloud architect role. Which one would I recommend? So 7.2D, I almost never recommend cloud engineering roles, and I almost exclusively recommend cloud architecture jobs. And here's the reason why. I truly feel that within about 5 years, we won't need at least 50% of the engineers that we actually do need right now. But at the same time, while AI reduces engineering jobs, AI creates many more architect jobs. So let's really talk about the bifurcation of the architect jobs, which are really the careers of the future, and these engineering careers, which are more of the careers of the past. I'm also going to tell you that it's typically easier for me to train someone and get them to be a cloud architect as their first job. It will take less time and effort than it would train someone to be a cloud engineer, which is a career that pays less and has a less of a future. So I generally speaking, for people that like architecture, that like meeting people, talking to people, building relationships, giving presentations, architecture jobs. And if someone wants to be a cloud engineer, I recommend that they go out there and they become an expert, that they live it, eat it, breathe it, sleep it, that when they're done their 8 hours of work each day, they spend another 2 or 3 hours a day becoming great, developing such extreme knowledge that they're always going to be better than the AI. Because the AI is better than the bottom 30 to 40% of cloud engineers right now. So there's not going to be a need for a junior engineer. There's only going to be a need for very senior and sophisticated engineers. And you can train for that as your first job too, and get it as your first job. You can. You just have to be great. So let's talk about the differences between the architecture career and the engineering career. The reason I don't recommend engineering careers is, what does a cloud engineer do? They write a lot of infrastructure as code scripts. AI can do that right now. They do some DevOps tools, and AI can help kick off some of those DevOps tools. The cloud engineer will deploy applications on machines, for example. They will work on Linux machines. They'll add users. They'll touch. They'll play with permissions, so to speak. They may patch a system, and that means the cloud engineer needs really good Linux skills. Now, the architect doesn't touch the technology, so they don't need Linux skills. Now, the cloud engineer will need to know how to automate Linux, things like cron jobs and things like bash shell scripting. So the cloud engineer is going to need that. Now, honestly, AI can do that too. Now, the cloud engineer will need to write Python scripts. So they'll need to learn Python. But guess what? AI can code Python too. So again, AI can take care of that job. Now, the cloud engineer will be writing Windows PowerShell scripts, but AI can do it, and in most cases better than the engineer. So again, the AI is doing it, and the AI doesn't cost money. So if you're going to be an engineer, realize the impact of AI on your jobs. And that's why 72D, we had a cloud engineering program, and it was a good one. But I stopped selling it 2 years ago because I didn't want to sell people a training program to go to a career that I think will be dead in 5 years, or at least the majority of the jobs. I think the best cloud engineers will always be there, but I really worry about engineers. Now let's look at the architect. The architect job is about helping organizations and businesses achieve more by aligning their people, their processes, and technology. So that means we will be aligning of everything. So if a company wants to sell more, what kind of architecture can we do to give the sales rep better information to increase the intimacy or the knowledge and the relationship between the customer and the company can I do? What kind of special pricing can I do based upon a customer's buying patterns with sale pricing? These are going to be the things that I'm going to be thinking about as an architect. Whereas the engineer is going to be thinking about, how do I code this script? So because the architect is focused on the business, and because every new piece of technology like AI creates new opportunities for businesses, as new technologies like AI become more popular, it creates additional jobs for architects. Now, where is that separation? The architect's becoming more of an executive, because the AI can do more of the tech, and the engineers are being, replaced by the tech. You can see what's that? Facebook that said they're going to be getting rid of a lot of their software engineers because AI is doing a better job. Google writes 25% of their code with AI. Now, the best engineers are fine. Even Microsoft that's doing a layoff, they're saying it's performance-based. They're getting rid of their lowest performance engineers. So if you think about it, there's still opportunity to be the best in the world engineer. But to the architect, all this new technology is just creating more jobs for us. So I recommend the architect job. Plus, typically speaking, it's a lot easier to learn how to give a presentation than it is to learn how to write a Terraform script. It's a lot easier to learn how to sell than it is to write a Python script. It's a lot easier to learn how the technology works and how it fits together and the strengths and weaknesses of the technology than it actually is to become an expert at building the technology. So for me, I generally recommend the architect career, but the question is really you. If you're one of these people that loves technology so much that would happily sit behind a computer and not leave your computer desk for 8, 10, 12 hours, be able to look at code, be able to see at the code, the implications of the code, and that's your life and you love that, now an engineering career is going to be good for you. Now, if you'd rather take someone to lunch and have a conversation and ask some questions and get paid twice as much, then an architecture career is right for you. But we need both. They're both equally important. Even if AI takes does the average cloud engineering work, we're still going to need superstars, the people that really understand the breaking point and the tuning and the optimization. But that's an expert. And that takes a very diligent approach. And you can do that. And that is totally fine too. But the key is what's going to make you happy. But for most people, I don't recommend engineering jobs in today's world because so much of it can be automated by AI. And here's the other thing. So as an architect, I have to visit my clients. I have to build a relationship, to lead a team. I've got to meet people in person. Now, all that means I have to live somewhat close to where I work. So what you'll see in many cases is organizations, they hire cloud architects in America, Canada, Germany, England, what have you, France. And then they do the cloud engineering work overseas at a lower cost because the engineering can be outsourced. The architect needs to meet with people. It's a communication thing. They can't be outsourced. But it doesn't matter if someone writes your code in California, Cambodia, Cape Town, Cameroon, the Cayman Islands. But what does matter is the cost of the person working there because of the cost of living in there. And our architects can't really be outsourced, but engineers can easily be outsourced to a country where they're paid 10% of what they would be paid in the US. So always think about that and the implications of your career. And for those reasons, that's why I typically recommend architecture careers. Because the other side is that we bring money in or business into the companies in most cases. We design, present, and sell an architecture, money comes in. And the engineer costs money to go build stuff. So what happens is when there's layoffs, they typically keep the people that bring money in, like sales reps and architects, and they typically lay off back-end engineers, and then they make the engineers they have either work harder or they hire twice as many engineers overseas. So that's why I've moved out of engineering roles 25 years ago. That's why most of the people that I've taken from engineering roles and moved into architecture have been so happy, because they're treated much better, they're paid much more, and the lifestyle is much better. But you still have to be happy. And I don't want you to talk about my career that I love and necessarily say you should do it. So think about what's going to make you happy, and then ask more questions. We're happy to help. Campano, what a good question. And I honestly had the same problem. In fact, Tyrone, if you want to find it for fun, there's a conversation with me and one of the VPs at NVIDIA a couple of years ago, my manager, Alvin DaCosta. And I know Campano. So if you want to pop a link to that video, Campano can see that that was me 25 years ago. That I didn't like meeting new people. I shied away from new conversations, that I'm an introvert. I really am. So how do you get past something you're afraid of? Well, I will tell you, one of the things that I've been terrified of my entire life is snakes, Campano. I have no idea why, but I've always been afraid of snakes. Well, fast forward 5 years ago, I got my wife angry at me because I did something stupid, and I wanted to surprise her by buying a cat. Now, I had the cat for 3 days, and the cat brought a snake into the house. Now, the thing that I'm most afraid of now, I've got to figure out a way to get out of the house. So I picked up some kind of tongs, grabbed the head, and escorted it out of the house. And I didn't die that day. I got really lucky, Capato. 3 days later, Cindy, my beautiful cat, brought me another one. Now, Cindy's now brought me in about 30 snakes. And every time Cindy brings me a snake, I take the snake out. And you know what? I'm no longer afraid of snakes. Why am I saying this, Campano? Because if you do what you're afraid of, you just won't be comfortable. So I, too, had this same fear. And I had a cousin that took me to a bar one day when I was around 21 years old. And he basically said, you're going to introduce yourself to everybody sitting at this bar. I'm like, huh? And I went around and introduced myself to everybody. And as soon as somebody left, my cousin said, now you got to go talk to this person, and this person. By the time he was done that, I was so much less afraid. And then ultimately, after that video that you can see with me and Alvin, when I realized that I was such an introvert, I just started practicing again, going to people, just introducing myself. And then at some point, it was just normal. It was no longer scary. It was no longer terrifying. I didn't have to sweat every time I thought about it. But Campano, I know exactly what you're talking about. So just do it. You'll be good. And I know you, Campano, and you're pretty terrific. Also, one more question. Where can you buy our classes and where can you teach us? So, two things. One is I'm going to have a complete and total webinar tomorrow, and I'd love to meet you there. Two is Tyrone's going to drop a link to our Cloud Architect program, if that's your goal. And what will happen is, here's how that program will unfold. Assuming you're in the main live program, the second somebody signs up to that link, within a few minutes, they'll get an automated email that says, welcome to Go Cloud Careers. Now, in that welcome email, they'll be told, here's how you go to class, here's how you access Slack, so you can message us, and they'll be given a link to the course. Now, inside of that course, there will be a group of courses that are related to business, leadership, sales skills, executive presence, interviewing, negotiating your salary, building your resume, developing a cloud architecture, learning network data center security concepts, all of it, all your certifications and all your training materials will all be there. So there is that. Now, we will also have 3 live classes per week. And you can come to these classes on Zoom. They're recorded in case you can't come. And 2 to 3 of these classes are related to architectural designs. And one of these 3 classes per week is going to be related to, what's the word I'm looking for? Either presentation skills, sales skills, executive presence, interview skills, or any of those other critical skills for the job. So 3 live classes per week. Now, we also have 1, potentially 2, hours of office hours each day during the week, where again you can go on Zoom and speak to our staff about any questions that you would have in the program, and then you would stay on that program until you're hired, because we want you to be hired. And that's pretty much the process. And we've got graduates, like I said, Apple, Amazon, Cisco, Google, IBM, Microsoft, Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Barclays Bank, JP Morgan Chase Bank, SN, Southern New Hampshire University, ABSA Group, Providian in the UK, Archetype, CDW, another big global one, didn't think of, TELUS, the Allegis Group, Bell Media, MUFG Bank, Calient NatWest, Zscaler, NetSpoke, Palo Alto Networks, kind of everywhere. And we'd be honored to teach you. And if you'd like, I'd be honored to meet you on the webinar tomorrow too. Okay, so I don't have much longer. If another question pops in, I'll be happy to answer it. In the meantime, I want to make sure that everybody knows about these 3 free things. We have a webinar tomorrow on how to become a cloud architect. It's completely free. It'll be on Zoom. We'll talk about the role. We'll talk about what we do. We'll talk about the skills you'll need, and you'll have an entire list of skills. And we'll tell you how we train people, but you'll know whether you train with us or anywhere else, exactly the skills that you need. At that point, after the initial presentation, we will literally open it up for questions. You think you're ready for an architect job, and you want us to give you a mini interview and see if you're ready? Think you're skilled enough? We'll tell you. Want us to check a LinkedIn profile? We'll tell you. Got careers questions on how do you go from where you're at to being a manager director? We can assess you and give you the advice. And it's all free, and we want to do it. So there is that. I'm also going to tell you that we have a free document on how to become an architect. And in that, again, it'll tell you everything you need to know about how to become an architect. And then the absolute last thing that I want to tell you about, and it's not small, it's that we're going to run a completely free certified information security manager bootcamp on our YouTube channel. And it's going to be completely free. And it'll be live. So we'll present, we'll answer your questions, and it's going to be live and free. So come join us. Please sign up. My team will drop the link in the description. So Raja actually popped a question in, and actually there's 2 questions. So I'll answer these 2. Why do I keep training others? Why not retire and watch Netflix? You know, Raja, it's an interesting thing you say that. So when I was 34 years old, I kind of did retire. And I got to tell you, it was fun for about 6 months. And after about 6 months, it was like, what am I doing? So that's when I did a lot of training of people back then. And all of a sudden, my retirement was like fun. And then honestly, I was just training people part-time. I was doing some architectural consulting part-time, Raja. And then what happened is I had set up a very large cryptocurrency database around 2018 in McPherson, Kansas, because it had the lowest electrical rates we could think of. It was like 5.6 cents a kilowatt hour. And while I was out there, I had created a data center and taught a community how to crypto mine in this data center with this low cost electric. And the next thing I realized, the owner of the building that we turned into a data center said, Mike, could you tell me how I can get my son hired right after he's done college, because he was studying computer engineering, and make him like one of the people you brought in here to create this data center? He's like, your people are like machines. They came in there, they racked, they stacked, they knew what to do, they had the power, they were like incredible. And my friend's name was Nick, and I said, Nick, I'll tell you exactly what to do. I'll take Nathan, your son, I'll buy him the 3 best-selling cloud computing courses. And then what I'll ultimately do is I'll spend 4 hours every Friday with him and mentor him personally. Well, here's what happened, Raja. 3 days later, the kid called me back, and he watched all those 3 training courses I had, at least the first couple of chapters of each. And he said, Mike, I set up an EC2 instance. I set up an S3 bucket. What's an EC2 instance? And I said, what do you mean what's an EC2 instance? It's a virtual machine. Tell me about virtual machine. Talk to me about the hypervisors. And Nathan went, I don't know. And I said, what do you mean you don't know? I just bought you 3 best-selling courses on cloud computing. So he said, watch them. So I said, Nathan, I'm going to watch these. And I said, if these courses are good, I'm going to tell your father you just don't pay attention. And I can't train you. I said, but if these courses are missing, I said, I know what we're doing. We're going to write a book on passing the AWS Solutions Architect Associate exam and professional exam. We're going to give it away for free, Nathan, because we're going to do that. And then I said, after that, we're going to do something different. And I'm going to start a training program on how to teach people how to become architects. Well, I watched those training programs in horror. I knew exactly what boxes to click, but you could have finished that training and wouldn't even know what cloud computing was. So I then interviewed Raja about 1,000 AWS certified people, asked them, what is cloud computing? How cloud computing works, asked them elements about the technologies, and no one had any idea. And I realized none could be hired. So What I then did was two things. One is I started giving away for free what our competitors charge for and just make it free because I love helping people. And then I created a program that we pretty much run at our cost, where we basically take all the people that have been trying to do these things for the last few years and we turn them into architects and get them hired. And honestly, Raja, I love this job so much. I love being an architect so much. And every time I watch somebody get hired, it's like I'm a kid getting my first tech job again. And for me, that's a high like no other. And I honestly love it. So I plan on getting people hired, training the next generation of technology professionals for the next few decades, because it's my love. Raja, it's so nice for that question. I can totally appreciate it. What about an option for becoming a cloud security architect? This is one of the best careers moving forward. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Please sign up for the Cloud Architect webinar. And then next Thursday, I'm planning on doing a webinar on becoming a cloud security architect. And I've trained many, many cloud security architects. Cloud security architects are one of the best out there because there is such a critical shortage of cybersecurity people. We're about 5 million cybersecurity people globally short. The World Economic Forum right now is panicked because they know the impact of cybersecurity and the shortages of the people we have is so severe. They're looking at it from a global economic perspective and what can actually be done. I'll give you, to kind of make it even scarier to see, which is why I've been training so many cloud security architects and why I like it so much, especially as a career now. But if you actually look at these statistics, it's they're unbelievable. So there's about 75 or 750,000 job openings right now in the US for security people. That's in Forbes recently. 87% of organizations in 2023 had a security breach because they can't find anybody to do it, according to the World Economic Forum. 90% of organizations report security skills gaps in their teams. 62% of IT decision makers, meaning the managers, say that the biggest challenge they have is finding candidates that actually understand network engineering and security, which are two of the most critical things for their world. So if you think about that, yes, it's going to be good. So sign up for our Cloud Architect program or webinar. Do attend the webinar tomorrow if you want to hear Cloud Architect. Ask some security architect, but on next Thursday, I'm going to do a full webinar on security architecture. And I'm very excited, and there'll be lots of fun things to talk about. Okay, if you've enjoyed this session, Alex Green, you want to become a security architect. How to transition from a career in network security to security architecture. The key is basically you're going from someone that's in an engineering role, which is a building role, to an architecture role, which is more of a designing role. Now, what does that actually mean? It means that your focus changes completely. And what do I mean by that? So if you're doing network security architecture, for the most part, and we'll have to finish here, Tyrone, you're focused on firewalls, access control lists, IDS, IPS systems for that, and how to build them. What we need to think about in security architecture is going to be a little different. We're going to need to think about how do we quantify an organization's risk. That's going to be a business thing. What are their assets? What are the risks to those assets? What is the calculated annual risk to that asset? Then it's more about learning how to mitigate these risks. So does the organization transfer the risk to, say, an insurance company? Does the organization mitigate the risk? What mitigation techniques do they need to do to manage the risk to get them in an acceptable level? Building a business case to fix these risks and associated costs that are going to be there. It's now designing the entire architecture. So what is that organization's identity strategy? What is their demilitarized zone strategy that they're going to be having? What is their enterprise strategy? What is their data loss prevention strategy? What is their data protection strategy? What type of cryptography strategy do they need? The types of encryption, the levels of encryption. What kind of security processes do we need? What kind of auditing processes and procedures do we need to do? What does the security policy need to look like? What does the disaster recovery plan need to look like? Which systems need to be? How do we protect the safety of our people? How do we put our people in a disaster and to keep the business going? Those kinds of things. So what you have to understand is you're going from a how to a why. Now that generally means it's a little different. When we train cloud security architects or security architects, here's what we do. Assuming they know networking, good. They have that piece. We typically still need to train them on the data center and on what all those data center elements are. We also have to train people on cloud computing, because even if they're in some way, shape, or form, we're going to be dealing with cloud computing, and cloud computing inherently is less secure than a traditional environment. It doesn't have the same kind of security boundaries. You've got the risk to the cloud provider, the risk to yourself. You've got some data sovereignty risks. You've got a lot of additional risks and things with a third-party provider than you do on your own. So you'll have to understand the network, the data center, and the cloud, and the implications of each, and how to protect the organization from these. Then crafting the right kind of security policy. Then determining crafting the right incident response procedures. So it'll be growing the knowledge of the fundamental concepts, teaching you additional things, getting you the right certifications, which in my mind and what I train my architects with is the CISSP as a primary intro to security, a CCSP for cloud security fundamentals, and a CISM for management and leadership perspectives. And then I add in zero trust architectures and NIST architectures, and then cloud architectures and integrating security across multi-cloud architectures, because that's the reality of our world today. And then actually teaching how to design various components. That's how I train architects. And then, of course, I give my architect students architecture projects where they have to design the architecture. They have to present it back to key stakeholders. They will have to sell it and all of those things. And ultimately, no, TOGAF will not teach you how to do any of these things. It will not bridge any knowledge gap. TOGAF is a framework that for people that know how to be architects that will tell them step 1, step 2, step 3. But unfortunately, TOGAF doesn't teach you anything about being an architect. All TOGAF is a framework that says, hey, architects, please start with the business vision, then map out the business architecture. But it won't teach you how to find the business vision. It won't teach you how to map out what the business architecture or even what the business architecture is. And then it'll tell you to re-architect the business architecture with the key stakeholders. But, it won't teach you what is a business architecture, how to architect the stakeholders, how to reintroduce it. It won't teach you any of that. So no, it's not going to bridge the gap. You're going to need training. Alex, why don't you join one of our free training webinars and you will learn, because it will make the difference. But unfortunately, there's no such thing as a certification that teaches you architecture. Just like there's no certification on how to be a CEO or a CIO or a CFO or any major job. But certain certifications can support our brand. So it was nice to meet everyone. I ran a few minutes late. I hope that's okay with everyone, because a few questions popped in. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of new videos. Alex, definitely come to that free CISM training session. If security is interesting to you, because that will cover some of those things. But there's many other things that I'd love you to join the free webinar. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe, hit the bell to be notified of new videos and new things like our free bootcamp, which is going to come to you to help you in your technology career. This is Mike Gibbs signing off for now, and I look forward to seeing you in a new video soon. Take care, everyone.